Hey guys, welcome back to Car System Installation channel. Today I'm going to show you how to install properly a dash cam power on a Porsche Cayenne 2013. In this case we are installing the GNET dash cam, but we're going to show you how to find the correct power, how to do it the right way. Now, if you're looking for an installation guide of how to use one of those things, the fuse taps, this is not the right video for you. We will not show how to install fuse taps. We will show you how to install it professionally, which will means we're also going to solder the wires, we're going to connect the wires. If you're a DIYer who likes to do it professionally, this is the video for you. If you're an installer who's looking to learn, this is the video for you. We are not doing the fuse taps. Okay, so basically when you do a dash cam, a lot of the dash cams today requires three power sets. One is ground, one is constant power, and one is ignition or accessory. It's supposed to be accessory, but again, some vehicles you can only find full ignition. Will work the same, just for the dash cam purpose. Now, the cameras need the three power for different reasons. So the cameras that monitor, for example, the GNET monitors the vehicle battery while the car is parked. So to know that the vehicle went into parking mode, it needs to see on the accessory wire power shut down, and it knows, okay, I'm going into parking mode, I'm going to start monitoring. So we're going to start by reaching the source. So we're going to open the side here, 2013 Porsche Cayenne. And we're going to see the source that a lot of installers go to. Fuse. They take the fuse tap, find which one is the ignition one, and basically tap into it. So they will search location. So if we have, this is constant, for example, this one is not, so we're going to turn the ignition on, and we have the power on it, turn the ignition off, we have power turned off. So they will use a fuse tap and connect to that part. Now, we are going to that source, but we are going to that source the right way. What does that mean? Not from a fuse. Fuse tap can come off, a fuse tap can fall, a fuse tap can cause overload on the same circuit. When you go into the source where the circuit comes in from, you're going to be able to distinguish, first of all, from which side it comes in. Second thing is, in case of a vehicle, this is not the case. This is, we can go, this is a very heavy duty accessories here. I'm already familiar with that vehicle, but some vehicles, this fuse will protect a circuit of a 5 amp, and if you have a feedback from the camera, a ground feedback that can make some type of resistance on this line, you will see stuff don't work. We've seen people having problems with push buttons don't work and other stuff that stopped working because of that. You can see on blogs and everything that people say after installing the dash cam, you have a problem in the vehicle that you see different lights on the dash and different issues. Then people recommend putting a battery. So yes, you can always put a battery pack, but you also, if you do it the right way, you won't have those issues, you won't have a feedback. So most vehicles that do not have a heavy duty, don't have a 14 gauge accessory, we will use, if it's an accessory sense or something, we will use a relay to trigger our system. But in this case, we don't need. So the first thing I'm going to do, I want to access the back of this fuse box, access the actual wires. So the way I'm going to do it, I'm going to open the screws in both sides, the top and the bottom, and I'm going to bring the fuse tap to the bottom of the vehicle. Now here I have a plastic cover, so I'm going to remove it. It's a Torx 20. And I apologize, I have my old logo shirt. This is the laundry day today. Okay, so I took the bottom cover down. Next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna remove the fuse box. So removing the fuse box, it's Torx 25, 2 screws. It's a very long screw, so I'm using a drill, but if you don't feel comfortable, just use a regular handheld Torx. very long screw. So if you're doing that by hand, it will take a while. Okay, so we have, as you can see, our fuse box is loose and we just need to access it. So to access it the easiest, from the back here, you actually can reach the harness that's holding it and make sure you feel what you're doing. You can also look here, it's very easy to see, so I'm going to bring you in. Okay, you can actually see your hand, you can see what you're doing here. I'm going to put it back in here and I'm going to take it down, take a look at the angle, which way you want, make sure it goes down without hurting anything in the way, and that's it. We have the back of the fuse box in here. Okay, easy access. I can see all my ins and outs and all the directions. So I'm gonna cut the zip tie that is around the harness, just to give me an easier flexibility on the wire. Okay. After you cut the zip tie, when you put it back together, just put the zip tie back in, put a new zip tie instead. Okay, now the box has tabs, so you can see those tabs. Okay, you can see the tabs. Just lift them and the back of the fuse box will come off. Okay, a few tabs all around. Okay, now we have access to the back. Now, here is, so let's take a look. You can see here, this is the row I showed you, has the ignition. You can see there's a few empty ones. Okay, this is the row. Now this is the back of that row. You can see the skinny wires. Those are the outputs. You see that main big black wire? This is the input. This is what comes in. You can see, actually, I don't know if you can see in the video, but you can see that the wire is actually connected to a kind of a long bracket, because it's basically the whole bottom area of that fuse. So if we go to this, this is our input. We don't have to worry about it. Now for the positive, same here. So you see here, we can see the red one, this big one. You can see that if you look at that, it's connected to the bottom of the fuse set. It's connected to the bottom of the fuse row. Basically, this is the supply to all those fuses. So if I take power from any of those fuses from the output, I'm actually on the same circuit that it's used. Doesn't matter if it's a constant or accessory, but the same circuit, if it's used a 10 amp to protect it, and I'm going on the output, I'm basically adding more amp on the same circuit. So whatever it's supposed to protect, now it can only protect 8 amp, because 2 amps are dedicated for the camera. But if I go to the input comes from the battery, usually 50, 60 amp inputs. Same thing about the accessory. So that is the right way that you do it. Now we're going to show you how I do the connections professionally. So the wires are a bit tight. I'm going to expose the wires. Now this tape is a fabric tape. It's a little bit more tricky to work with. You can open it with a knife, or you can actually use a pick tool. I'm going to show you the pick tool. Now, something to understand about these vehicles, sometimes inside this taped in here, they actually had spare wire or whatever they had, and they loop it and they put it inside the fabric and they tape it. I do not know why they do that. It doesn't make any sense, but it will be an extra wire. Now, if you go and you cut it, sometimes because it's hidden inside this tape, you won't notice it. and you will have some issue, and now you can find it. So if you find after your installation that there is an issue, just check the wiring if you didn't break any of the wires. Now, with a pick tool, basically what you do, you put it in the fabric wherever you want, and you pull. Okay, so you do that one, and you pull it. By pulling it, you're basically breaking this tape. Now, by pulling it, less chances of breaking the wires. But I also use the knife, and I'll show you how I do with the knife. So a lot of people put the knife in full blast, all the way out like this, and cut everything, and everything comes out. I take just a tip, very small tip, and I gently go a few times. Even if you go 10, 15 times, it's better than to fix it after. So I'm just gonna release a little bit of this. Now you obviously want to make sure that you go on the same line that you did before, and then I start with my hand. I opened it, start with my hand, I help a little bit with the pick tool. Just need to have some exposure, just to have more access to the wire, not easy to solder. Okay, so removed quite a bit of a chunk, and you can see how easy is my access now. So for example, that big black wire, look how much room I can work on it without an issue. Same thing about the red one that I'm planning to use, all in here. Very easy to access, very easy to do. Okay, so now the next thing is basically to expose them and connect the wires we need to connect to them. So I'm gonna start with one of them. If you're starting with a positive, make sure it doesn't touch anything. Now I'm gonna try to see if I can show you what I do here. So these wires very hard to just peel. So I'll show you my trick, what I do, and again, make sure that if you do it, you don't squeeze too tight. So I'm gonna squeeze in one spot, not all the way, quick squeeze, quick squeeze. Now take the knife, very small blade, very little open, and I'm gonna guide it with my finger on the wire, very gently. Okay, that's how I deal with the thick wires. Then with your nail, peels off. Very simple. There are different tools that can do a different way to expose it. A lot of the tools I see, when you expose, they break the seal and they try to squeeze it to the side. Then you don't have a nice opening. But if you look here, very nice, very clean, very easy. None of the wires broke. Now, you can expose the accessory and connect it. If they touch each other, you will start seeing the dashboard turns on, turns off, stuff like that. So preferably, I always like to, when I finish with the positive, to solder it and tape it, as that is the most not dangerous, but the one that is most prone for problems. Because if you move and touch stuff and you burn it, sorry, not burn it, if you touch it with the ground, you can burn the fuse on it. And now again, like I said, it can be a 50-60 amp fuse in the engine bay. You want to try to find it, it's sometimes a headache. So easier just to solder that one, tape it, and finished. Everything soldered. Now the reason I'm using the solder and not those, there's a lot of people using those locking clips that they clip on the wire. I don't use those things. First of all, they break the wire, so they damage the wire, and they're not reliable. A lot of times we see that they don't have a full contact properly when we see it from other vehicles that came in. So I prefer to do that Now you can cut the wire and to half and put the power wire from both sides and use a shrink to close it, which again, it's very good way to do it, but it's an overkill in a case like that, because you cut in a 14 gauge wire just to be able to put a shrink is not needed. If you put the tape and you make sure that there's nothing sticking out, that's all you need. I always feel it with the fingers. If there's nothing, when you solder, nothing is poking out of it, that means it's perfectly fine. So we've done our constant. Now we're gonna do our accessory same way. I'm gonna tape it. I'm gonna go again. Okay, now I'm actually gonna connect our test light to confirm both connections I've just done. So I'm gonna put the test light to ground. First I'm gonna go to the main one. So as I can see, I have power on it, and I'm gonna connect to the black one. As you can see, I don't have power, so I'm gonna turn the ignition on and off. Now we can actually test if this is accessory or not by the way you test accessory is starting the vehicle. If the light turns off during crank time, that is accessory. That means this is a power source that is not needed for cranking, not a fuel pump or injectors or something. If the source does not turn off, that is a full ignition. It doesn't mean that it's 100% needed. Some of the European vehicles have only ignition full. Very hard to find any accessories on them, but that's because the computer decides what is needed for cranking or not, so you don't have to worry about overloading. But again, this is the source we need. In this case, accessory. Solder the wire properly. I'll tape it the same as the other one. And that is pretty much done for the power section. The only thing is left is ground. Ground is very easy to do. I'll show you a couple of methods. Let's see actually if I have here the OBD. Okay, so this section is done. Now let's see what we're gonna do with the ground. Okay, so for the ground we can go to any of those. I can go to the metal body in here, which will be an easy. Make sure that when you do that, I've seen again a lot of people that are doing very odd ways of having a ground. We had people that are using actually opening one of the screws and putting the wire there and just closing the screw on it. No, you need to use a ring terminal to do it properly. Then we've seen people that are doing the same thing with a ring terminal, but then the ring terminal is mounted on a plastic, and the screw, yes, the screw itself, it is getting threaded to a metal, but they have the part that is screwed on, for example this vent, then behind it has the plastic, then behind it has the frame. So yes, it is touching, but no, not the right way. So you either go directly to the frame or you find a ground source. Every vehicle has a ground spot that is a splitter basically to the rest of the ground in the dash area. Now, not always easy to access, so if it's not, don't access it. But something that we have here in every vehicle. So every vehicle has OBD. In the OBD we have a ground wire. So we're gonna go to the OBD and connect to that ground wire. So I took the OBD out in here, okay? And don't be fooled. If there is a black wire on the OBD, that does not mean automatic ground. Remember, not always black is ground. As I just showed you, in this case, black is accessory. And it still doesn't mean that in the OBD, the black will be accessory. So that's not the way you judge it. In OBD, pin number 4 is always ground. That is universal. And the reason is, when you put an OBD scanner, it needs a power and ground. So pin number 4 is our ground, okay? So in this case, the pin number 4 is brown. On the OBD itself, you have the pins that are marked 1 to 16, and you can actually test it if you want. You don't have to, but you can actually test it. So what I did here, I connected one side to positive, and I'm touching the ground to make sure I have this working, and then I'm going to do it on the OBD, and I know I have the correct one. Now you also have, on the OBD, you also have the power, okay, which is pin number 16, okay? And that will always be power. Now you can use that power also for your camera if you need. That's covered usually by 7.5 or 10 amp fuse. And the reason you can use that one, because the only time this OBD is actually being used is when you do a scanner reading. Some people do put their own GPS tracking or other stuff on the OBD, and it is taking more of amp because it's used for something. But most people don't use the OBD for anything except when the mechanic comes over and do the scanner. Therefore, to use this for a dash cam would be more than okay. Solder the wire properly. So my ground wire, the same. I will connect to it. Now the ground, unlike the ground wire, unlike my thick wires on the positive, is not that thick. So I'm not gonna do the same method with a knife because I don't need it unless I'm gonna see that it doesn't cut properly. So I'm gonna, with putting my fingers here, always leave yourself enough space. Don't do it very close to the edge, because if you break the wire, impossible to fix it. So push as much as you can, or if you need, open the tape and give yourself enough room that in case something gets cut, you can resolder and extend it. So I'm putting my fingers in here, I'm pressing, I'm not pressing too hard, and I'm pushing with this, and we have an exposed ground. Just gonna make it a bit bigger. Now if it doesn't go easy, you can do the same as I did before, tap the other one, use the knife, and so and so. And now we're gonna cut our ground from here. Cut this permanent. Now, for soldering, you can find different soldering irons out there. The one I'm using is 100 watt. And the reason I'm using the 100 watt, because you saw how easy it was for me to solder the thick wires. Very easy. The skinny wires even easier, obviously. So you don't want to get 25 watt soldering and have it sitting on the wire for 5 minutes just to warm up the wire, because it might look like the soldering is melted on it, but many times it won't do properly. And what you're gonna end up with is what we call the cold solder, which means it just looks like it's actually touching, but it's not penetrating, it's not touching. It's not gonna separate, but for whatever reason it doesn't touch properly. And that's something you're gonna have an issue with later on. So you don't wanna do that. So always use a hot solder as much as possible. If you're using a gas solder, see how many BTUs they give. Now, for this, we have here, we can tape it, and we're pretty much done with this. I do have a proper tape in this case, but again, it's not mandatory. I'll show it to you. Okay, since we work a lot on high-end vehicles, we always make sure we have the tape. So this is a fabric tape, which is the same as the original. That makes it just a bit more clean. It doesn't really affect anything. It's just a matter of a clean look like factory, kind of look like nobody ever touched it. So you just tape it nicely until it's all hidden. And it looks like nobody ever been here before. I'm gonna put our zip tie. If you really want to be picky, you can follow the way the zip tie followed before. Just do like this. Do like this. It kind of goes like a thread. Okay. This piece goes from here. Then tape it. Put that back. And we're going to put it back in place. Now, this install Jeff gave you is a very clean look, very nice, very professional. You do a dash cam this way. If you're a person who offers that service, you're gonna have more and more customers coming by for the clean look. Obviously, the rest of the wiring has to be run clean. You run the camera, have to make sure you open the panels. One of the things we always recommend, and we do it in our shop, when you run the camera or other wires like microphones or remote starters, antennas, anything you run through the A-pillar, don't go on the outside. Even though you tack it in, don't go on the outside of the airbag. Now, the airbag will not have any problem opening if the wire is there. The airbag is opening about 400 kilometers an hour. It will break that cable easily. But when you have the cable running in the front of the airbag, so in case the airbag opened, that whiplash you're gonna have from the wire can cause damage to the person. It will open and it will whiplash in their face. If the wire is behind the airbag, so the airbag is the only thing that opens. Obviously, we all know that airbags can still cause damage, but that's something we can prevent. But having a wire in front of them that will break and open to your face and cause damage, that's something you don't want to do. So this will be the right way to install a dash cam or any other thing that you need accessory for or power. You can use this method. Properly solder the wires, do it in the back, make it look clean and nice. As you can see, nothing in the front, no fuses, no fuse tabs, just clean and nice. For more videos of how to install electronics in vehicles, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, and have a great day.